on Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
You're listening to The Jan Price Show, and my guests today are Jesse Thomas Cook, who is a producer, editor, and director, and Liv Collins, who is the co-writer and producer and stars in the brand new movie, zombie film called Dead Sight. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you here. All right, I got to start with you, Jesse. First, what you've done other horror films, so why is this a genre that you particularly are attracted to?
Well, I started making films about 15 years ago, and horror seemed to be the genre to kind of get your foot in the door. All my favorite directors usually started out in horror, even Spielberg with Jaws and Peter Jackson. So
Roger
it sort of
Corman.
just started that way of, exactly. It sort of just started as it seems like a good genre to enter the business. I always loved horror films growing up, of course. And then me and my colleagues started a company, and before we knew it, we had made 10 horror films. But the one sort of subgenre of horror that I never really got to tackle, which was my favorite subgenre, was a zombie film. And I always just loved zombie films growing up, and I had produced a zombie film back in 2010, but I never got to actually direct one. So Dead Sight, for me, was my chance to sort of have a go at the zombie genre.
And what attracted you to the zombie genre? What is it about it that you liked?
I think probably just growing up, and my dad always taped old horror films, and George Romero, Night of the Living Dead, and Dawn of the Dead, those films just stuck with me growing up. I would rent horror films, and I think it was sort of the claustrophobia of the zombie film, the sort of the idea where you could tackle sort of human conflict and trauma, but wrapped into a greater sort of undead catastrophe. I sort of just, like the idea of like survival in sort of an apocalyptic realm versus, creature features or monster films, which I tackled earlier in my career. So zombies were just sort of something I always loved with zombie video games. And, I guess I was just drawn to them because they were just my favorite kind of nostalgic thing growing up.
That's really great. It really is. Now, Liv, what about you? Because zombies are not something that women are naturally attracted to, and you co-wrote this movie. So, why did you become attracted to the topic of zombies?
I also have always loved horror films, and zombies is something that scares me so bad. Just illness and, how terrifying people can be when they kind of are unwell. And when we were brainstorming what we wanted to do, we I hadn't been dealt with any type of zombie film, and it just kind of seemed like a cool thing to tackle because it has such an audience already. And how could we put our own little, Canadian spin on this huge genre that has such a huge audience? And
it is huge. I guess The Walking Dead has really, brought this to the forefront even more than it had been in the past. So it is a very popular genre. So our audience knows. Jesse, why don't you give us a snippet of what this film is about?
So the film is really about a character who wakes up in an ambulance blind, and he's handcuffed, and the ambulance is abandoned beside a graveyard. So that's like the classic setup, and it was sort of a throwback to George Romero of, he just threw his characters into a graveyard with the undead right at the beginning of Night of the Living Dead. So it's kind of like, let's just throw this guy who can't see into this zombie situation and see where we can go with it. And then it was a little bit later on, there was always going to be a female police officer character, and Liv, being my wife, of course, and being pregnant, 7 months, we thought, what if Liv could do this police role? And that adds a whole other human element, and so you have this very vulnerable blind man and also a very vulnerable pregnant woman, and let's see how they could work together to survive a zombie outbreak and do it in a way so they're not just killed in the opening 5 minutes. That's why we don't have hordes of zombies in Dead Sight. It's very contained. It's very rural countryside. And let's just put these characters together. We know nothing about them, and they realize they need each other. So that was really the evolution of the story. We're just taking this idea of these characters who are already vulnerable and already have these weaknesses, and they're not these battle-hardened, zombie killers like in Walking Dead. They really are just thrust into the situation, and let's sort of contain it to the dignity of the humans, and not make it about anything exploitive or anything even sexual. It was just like, let's just have this vulnerable man and this woman, and they have to help each other to survive.
Both very vulnerable.
That was it.
It's great in that respect. Liv, I didn't realize you were actually pregnant when you filmed this. I thought it was great, great prosthetics going on there. So what was it like filming this? How many months were you pregnant when you filmed this?
We shot this at the very end of November, beginning of December, and our son Hollis was born February 1st.
Oh my goodness!
So I was super. Yeah.
You were what?
7 months pregnant, I guess, and so it was really hard. But I was determined to do it. I was excited because when you're pregnant, you're sort of bound to your pregnancy. You can't do a lot of things, and I was just going to be producing the film, and then once it was like, okay, I can act in the film, then you kind of get the adrenaline rush of, sweet, I'm gonna kill some zombies 7 months pregnant, and we had a blast. It was so fun, and then so we actually had to shoot some scenes after I'd already had the baby in April, and so I wore a prosthetic stomach, and then that's when we could actually do some more of the fight scenes. I have a big fight scene with one of the zombies in the graveyard, so that was a lot better to do not actually pregnant, and
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad to hear that, because I thought, oh my gosh, because there are some things you do in this movie, and if you were actually pregnant, so you were actually pregnant, but I'm glad you waited to do some of those scenes later on. And I just have to say this, Liv, you are stunningly beautiful. You really are. I mean, it was hard to think of you as a policewoman, I have to tell you. You're gorgeous. You really are. And mesmerizing to watch in the movie. So everybody just go watch Dead Sight just to see how beautiful Liv is. It's a fun movie too. So how long did it take you?
One of the Jim, one of the hidden things in the film is when Liv gives birth at the end of the film. I actually recorded the birth of our son in February. And I had my phone out, and Liv's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, we got to get his first cry, recorded." And that's our baby's voice in the film. His first cry is at the end of the film.
That's so exciting. That adds some more to the movie. That's why I love what I do, because you always find out little tidbits about behind the scenes that nobody else would know. Go ahead, Liv.
Well, it was very funny because, I have the baby, and then I see Jesse, and he's got his phone up in the air, and he's like, "I got it." And I'm like, "You got what?" And he's like, I got his first cry for Dead Sight." I'm like, "We just had a baby." It's working. But it is really fun. And then so when we showed the film at Toronto Film Festival, Blood in the Snow, when we did our Q&A, up on stage, I'm now telling this huge audience, like, "Hey, that's actually our real baby's cry," and they don't care. They just want to see the zombies. And I'm like getting emotional. It's like, that's my real baby's cry.
Well, this was also your baby. Dead Sight was another baby. Actually, giving birth to a movie is huge. Definitely huge. How long did it take you to write it? Did you co-write it together?
We co-wrote, so we came up with the idea of Dead Sight, me, Jesse, and our co-writer Kevin, and then Kevin and I co-wrote the script together.
So the concept and it was part of what Jesse was involved in, that part of it. So where did you actually film this movie?
It was filmed mostly in Owen Sound, Ontario. and a little bit in our hometown of Collingwood, which is about an hour away. Both towns are north of Toronto on Georgian Bay, and we'd filmed a few films in the past in Owen Sound. It's a very sort of Rust Belt, Gothic town, and we knew a gentleman there with a bunch of old properties like the farmhouse and a couple other houses that we use, like the basement scene. And so it was filmed in 11 days.
I was going to ask you.
It was very, very cold. The funny thing with Dead Site is we started in late November thinking there's going to be snow. And because there's, like this year, for instance, there was snow in early November all the way till the end of April. But there was no snow when we started filming. Until about the 7th day of the shoot, we got hit with a blizzard. And we hadn't established snow in the film, and because the film takes place over just 2 days in the story, we had to stop filming the exterior scenes and just move interior, and that's why we had to pick it up again at the end of April. And Liv had already had the baby, which allowed us to sort of rewrite some scenes where some of the scenes where she was just going to shoot a zombie, she could now kind of wrestle with the zombie, and we sort of just took advantage of that aspect. But yeah, it was very odd. The whole film was written as though there was going to be snow, but instead it just has this kind of dead late fall look, which ended up lending itself very nicely on camera, I thought.
Oh, it did. It really did. I love your choice of color hues that you used. A lot of blues, but particularly towards the end is the red. What made you decide to film so much of the latter part of the film with a red lens?
Well, that end factory location is like an abandoned grain terminal building in Collingwood, and the bottom of it is this labyrinth. It's sort of a maze, this concrete maze, and the lighting in there wasn't great. We had filmed in there before in previous films, like it's an old military complex and used flashlights, and for this one we wanted to give it sort of a new look and make it feel like for me, we kind of designed it like it would feel like a bit of a video game. Like this is the end level, so let's like make it really red. And now I'm glad you picked up on the colors because it is blue and very cold on the outside, but then with the red and sort of the coming of the baby, kind of all just fit in with sort of the end scene. And it was just a nice lighting touch that we were able to do. Obviously, with low-budget horror films, kind of the lighting is an afterthought at times, but our director of photography was very good, and he tried to, use motivated lighting and stylize it where we could.
I just love the choice. I really do. I thought it just added so much to the movie. If you were just tuning in, you were listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies, and my guests today are director Jesse Thomas Cook and actress and co-writer Liv Collins, and we're talking about their brand new movie, Dead Site. So let's talk, Liv. Let's talk a little bit about your co-star, his character, and what is his name?
Adam Siebold, and he's a good friend of ours, and he is also a writer, so he was great to have on set because when we would have little hiccups with, logistic things or production, he was to be able to kind of come up with a, solution, and he's actually a very funny guy, and so he plays such a straight character in this film, and he's great to work with. And we had one scene where it's when we're locked in the basement, and I tell him that he can't come with me because I realize he's such a liability to take out into the world with all these zombies, and we only have so many bullets, and I can't babysit him and be pregnant and try and find this ambulance. And so we kind of improv a little bit, and we're going to this scene, and I said, "You can't come with me." And he turned to me and he yelled, he's like, "Is it because I'm blind?" And we all just burst out laughing, and it's this really serious scene, but we were so exhausted. We're in this dusty old basement. We've been working for 10 hours in the cold, and anyways, and then we just couldn't really bring it back. The whole crew were all just giggling and laughing in this serious thing, but Yeah, he really did a great job with his character. I thought he did a great job.
He did. Why the choice? I mean, obviously the title's Dead Sight, but why the choice of making him blind? And I couldn't quite figure out why did he have police cuffs?
So
when we started, go ahead.
Go ahead, Liv. I'm sorry.
When we first came up with the concept, it actually was kind of stemming as a comedy. We thought, if you couldn't see, if you were temporarily blind, had some type of accident or something, and then you woke up in a zombie apocalypse, like, what would you do? And then we thought, wouldn't it be funny if he just out of chance was sort of, missing these zombies and they weren't getting him, and he was like the only guy surviving. And then as we kept going, then we thought, no, this is more serious. And so that's kind of where it came from. Well, how would you survive if you couldn't see? Because it's such a huge, survival need during a zombie apocalypse.
Right.
And how can you use your other senses? And so that's kind of where it came from. And in the story, it's pretty minimalistic. Like, it doesn't just sort of tell you exactly what happened, but he was being held because they thought that he might have sort of done this bad thing, and he had smoke. Oh, what's it called? Like a smoke. The smoke had temporarily taken away his eyesight from a fire.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they were actually investigating him, so that's why he was handcuffed. Or it's really up to the audience's
discretion to figure it out. Yeah. Well, I like the fact that things are.
That was exactly the whole conceit of the film, where we didn't want to spend 20 minutes of showing what had happened to him, and then the zombies kind of rise up. We're like, let's just throw this guy into the situation, and we'll give you hints of what happened to him. Liv's character, Mara, finds the police report where it says his family was involved in a house fire. He's possibly suicidal. He may be a suspect in that. We don't really know. I kind of take it like he's weirdly given the second chance at life to make sure Mara gets to safety. And so he's weirdly this guardian angel, where the start of the film is concentrated on Liv's character, Mara, saving Ben, Adam, and then it turns out it was actually Adam who had to sacrifice himself. But Liv's right, it started as a comedy. It was like, what if we had sort of this like Seth Rogen guy who's like Mr. Bean, almost blind, and he's just narrowly escaping these zombie situations. And then we thought, well, geez, that'd be funny as like a Saturday Night Live skit. I don't know how we could do this for a feature, but we thought that's probably a good idea. We hadn't seen that before in zombie films. Usually there's, you definitely have cops and stuff, and you have battle-tested people or, weak people who they're going to get killed. And we thought this might be an interesting thing, because what if we just follow this blind guy and shoot it all with close angles? Like I don't know if you noticed that, Jan, but I'm hesitant in my edit to ever show wides when I'm on Ben, because then it kind of removes the fear. You're like, oh, okay, there's nothing around them. So I just threw all the wides out the window in my edit. Let's just stay on Ben, because it's so much scary. You don't know what's around each corner. So you're kind of seeing the movie through his point of view.
Yes, yeah, and that kept the tension up, by doing it that way too. Exactly. I thought I thought that the chemistry between you, Liv, and Adam was really also quite good. Given the fact that you hadn't really, met each other before, and you're a police officer and he could be a criminal, but how you worked together, because it was you two against the world of zombies. So I thought that also worked extremely well in the movie. Another thing that
it's also because 6 months before that, we had filmed a film with Liv and Adam as well. They had acted together in a thriller. So sorry to cut you off, but
that's all right.
They actually had that chemistry from a previous film.
Maybe that's why it worked so well. Maybe because they already had that shorthand and were able to work well together. The other thing I absolutely loved about your film is the music. Who was the composer? I mean, the music was just right on, was just really, really wonderful.
I love the music in Dead Sight. Adrian Ellis is our composer, and he is a rock star. He is one of my favorite people to work with. He's so creative, and he really brought the doom and gloom to this film, and I think it's a huge asset because this is almost like a silent film. Like, there really isn't that much dialogue.
Yes.
And he crushed it.
He did. I mean, he really did.
Yeah.
I mean, because it just stood out, obviously, because you're right. There isn't a lot of dialogue in the movie. So the music really carries the mood and the tone of the film more than even, I mean, obviously, the music behind most films is there to help direct your mood. But this one in particular, because of the fact that there wasn't so much dialogue, so it really, highlighted and the mood and tone of the film. It really was. He's quite good. Quite good. So you've worked with him before, Liv?
Yeah. We worked with him on a film called The Horde, which was completely different. It was kind of like a comedy mockumentary. And then Dead Sight. He's just so good, Jen. Like, you watch the film with him, you talk to him for 20 minutes, and then it's like you're handing your baby off to him, and you're basically saying, how does this film make you feel, Adrian? And then he would inevitably come back and just blow our minds every time. The minimal notes he would need, and it's almost like you're seeing the film for the first time, even though you wrote it and directed it and were there the whole time. But now you're seeing how somebody else is interpreting it, and it's just a beautiful score. In fact, he just scored, Liv just directed, and Adrian scored that as well.
I was just going to ask you, what are you working on next? Liv and are you working together on the next project?
Yes, we have just started our own film company, Collingwood Film Co. And wonderful. I just directed our flagship film, and it's called To Hell with Harvey. It's an indie comedy about a kind of a washed-up writer who goes on this book tour with a recent high school graduate who's just kind of looking for some experience and info on how to be a good writer. And they just kind of go through these funny situations together, and it's actually really heartwarming at the end. And Adrian scored that film. He did a great job. And yeah, we've just applied to some film fests, and so that's what we just finished. And Jesse's going to direct the film next month, and then we're doing another one in the fall.
Wow, you're busy, and you have 2 young boys on top of it all. I'm very, very, very impressed. Well, before we go, where can people, you busy couple, where can people go see Dead Sight?
So Dead Sight is being released across North America from RLJ Image Releasing. They're the distributor. So I believe DVDs, anywhere you can get DVDs, Walmart DVD stores, if there's any left. And then Amazon Prime and all the streaming sites too. I don't think Netflix, but definitely Amazon Prime. And yeah, July 2nd.
July 2nd.
That's the date.
All right, July 2nd. Everybody go look for Dead Sight. I have to tell you, zombie movies are not my genre, but I did enjoy Dead Sight. I thought it was very well done. So, and I thank you. You're welcome. And I thank you both for being on the show. My guest today have been Jesse Thomas Cook and Liv Collins, and we've been talking about their brand new zombie movie, Dead Sight. Go to the Jan Price Show on Facebook to learn more about upcoming shows, and while you're there, please like my page and write some comments. And to listen to the Price Movie Minute movie reviews and to listen to archive shows that you may have missed, go to thejanpriceshow.com, and also look at the iHeart podcast channel for the Jan Price Show, all about movies.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1, streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
The Ozio Theater in downtown Monterey is now open every day, showing independent and foreign films. The Ozio Theater has new concession offerings, including beer, wine, hard cider, and their homemade Lush Slush. You can now schedule private event screenings for community charity events, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a fun gathering of friends. For more information, visit the Ozio Theater online at oziotheater.com.